So we have four wonderful panelists from across the islands who are in leadership positions in the arts community there. Starting with our first panelist is Carol Ferguson from very own Gabriola Island, Executive Director of the Gabriola Arts Council. Good to see you, Carol. We have Andrew Mark, Executive Director of Hornby Arts from Hornby Island. Thank you for making it off the ferry, Andrew, and joining us. Mary Louise Albert, Artistic Executive Director from the BC Movement and Arts Society on Malcolm Island in Swingtula. And Yael Wand, Executive Director from Salt Spring Arts. Wow, I'm very excited to have you all here today. And we have about half an hour for our panel, and we've left about 10 minutes for a Q&A as well. So I do invite everybody who's listening to also share any questions you have in the chat, and we'll collect questions in the chat. Kaya will monitor that, and then time permitting, we will engage our panelists in those questions as well. Kaya, I just wanted to check. Welcome. I thought maybe we could start with a very quick. You could just say a quick introduction of yourself, and maybe give us a sense of what kinds of things are happening in your organization right now. In 1 minute or less, we'll just have a quick round there so we can meet each other. So I'd like to start with Carol. If you just share a little bit about what's going on at the Gabriola Arts Council. What kinds of things are you doing these days?
The Gabriola Arts Council is all about pivoting, and we've been pivoting for the last 2 years. I was just writing the introduction to our newsletter, and I said that's been the word of the decade. I've heard it too many times, but it's true. We've been actually really fortunate with the pandemic in that we've been able to do just that and provide programming. Right now, we are quiet because of the new restrictions. But we have big plans for the end of March into April, and a festival in July. And we're just about positivity. We're about believing it's going to happen, and all of us believing the same thing, and we make it happen. So we don't think about the pandemic so much.
Okay, thank you. It's good to hear the positive messages coming from your organization. Andrew, how about you?
Sure. So I'm a recovering academic, and I joined the Arts Council about 4 years ago. We have changed from a $30,000 a year budget to about $200,000 a year, and we are replacing a 1960s trailer with a $2 million plus art center. And so we're just experiencing rapid growth and the good things and the challenges that come with that. We're, started with basically 1.25 staff, and now we're up to, almost 6. And we could get as high as 15 by the time we're done. And that's kind of, that's where we're at. Yeah.
Wow, it sounds like a time of real expansion on Hornby for the arts. That's fantastic. Yael, how about you?
So I am Yael with Salt Spring Arts, and I'm trying to use another word other than pivot, Carol. I think it's been 2 years of nonstop renegotiating what the rules are and what we can do and what people are comfortable with. We haven't stopped delivering programs, but we've constantly shifted. And it feels like we're kind of also constantly in restart mode. So we're getting excited for a really busy season. At the same time, the last few years have given us a chance to work on some of our kind of really important administration and back-end invisible things. So we're just about ready to launch 2 new websites in March. We're redoing our own organizational website, and we're also launching an online store for Artcraft. So that's been a long time in the making. And we're looking forward to 2022 summer programming. That's going to include a showcase of Indigenous artists called Jacinset, artists from Wasanich, and as well, hopefully a full season of our summer concert series. So that's 10 programmed outside free concerts. And I think the last 2 years have really shifted our focus, not only just from programming, but to a lot more cultural development, a lot more collaboration within our community and within the region. And that's been really exciting.
Thank you. Thanks, Yael.
How's it going?
Mary Louise, could we hear from you as well? What are you up to up there in Malcolm Island?
Well, I've just launched, BC Movement Arts Society has just launched a annual dance series. And it was to have started, of course, a year ago. It just started actually this December and January. And we, for part of the first production, these two beautiful dance artists, Rebecca, Margaret, Lavana, Ellis, we had to have postponed the January shows, and they're going to be coming back in January. It's been quite the time period over with the last couple of years with what's been happening with the pandemic, and not necessarily being able to jump, go into this new live, 5 production dance series, has enabled the society to actually get the confirmed funding from BC Arts Canada Council and Canadian Heritage, and also to get the confirmation into our second year. So in some ways it gave us some sort of security. So when I used to run Chutzpah, you're going in and you're programming people and you don't know how much money you have and you don't know that. So that's the main thing that we're really focusing on, is getting this first season going. We also do creation residencies for often the dancers who I'm programming, or other, and I've been able to do 3 of those this year because of it was easy, a little easier to get around the restrictions. But mainly the emphasis of what we're doing is bringing up the same quality of high level contemporary dance, and also, there's an international component too, up to this region where we perform in Tula, Port McNeill, Alert Bay, and now Campbell River, so that people do not have to travel down. And the amount, as from coming, especially over a mountain pass, etc., it's all at least within an overnight at the least. So so basically it's moving on with this series, and hopefully it won't be too crazy for the end of March when I'm bringing up 605 company 605. Who knows, right? Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks
You're
for
welcome.
the little glimpse into what you're trying to do up there in Malcolm Island. And thank you so much for joining us. It's great to have some northern island friends here. Sometimes we have a lot of southern island friends, so it's great to have you.
Thank you.
So panelists, thank you so much for your introductions. And I wanted to dive into this, our theme here around vitality and community vitality, and what role the arts plays in the kind of health or the spirit of our places where we work. So I'm wondering, and I think we can do this a bit popcorn. I'll take it around to all of you to answer the question, but I'm curious how much you identify yourself and your organization as kind of playing a role in health, in the community health. Whether you think of yourself as in kind of a helping or healing role, and what are some of the ways that you think you've been successful, your organization has been successful in supporting that vitality in your own community. And I'm wondering if anybody would like to start. Yeah.
I had an epiphany early on in 2020, and I would say it was somewhere around March or April, when everything was scaled back and paused, and I really had to look at what is it that we do from kind of a place of catastrophe at that moment, and of huge uncertainty. And I got down to the core that really what our organization is good at doing is bringing people together. That arts is the means by which we do that, whether it's visual, performing, any literary. And in our community, that really meant coming together in person as well. That was a really important thing for people. So the digital, the move to digital was challenged by that. But it really, I think that I hadn't thought of it in terms of health. Certainly, if we think about it in terms of vitality, We think about it in terms of belonging and in terms of dialogue. You know, the arts can bring people together and present things that are very difficult to talk about, maybe being a little less difficult. So, you know, we had an exhibit in February of 2020 that was focused on Southern resident orcas, and it was a visual arts exhibit with events programmed around it. And it was a really, I think, good example of bringing people to have a really necessary, important, difficult conversation, giving people a chance to learn and to grieve and to have an experience, you know, an immersive experience in art. So yeah, it's interesting to think about it in terms of health as you posed it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I you know, hearing those things that around bringing people together and a sense of belonging and providing a space to have the dialogue. I can certainly see the links with that, with a sense of vitality and health. And I'm wondering, I'm thinking that maybe Carol, you would like to jump in there and share some of what you've been doing and maybe your own epiphanies about what your role in the community is.
Well, one thing I neglected to say in the introduction was my first day as executive director of the Arts Council was March 16th, 2020. So I don't know anything else but this. And it started with health right away, because I recognized that people's mental health were going to be suffering in a grave way as time went on with isolation. As we all know, if you've been forced into isolation, you know, even being locked in your room as a kid, you can't come out. It's a horrible feeling. And so our whole community was there together. And so we did talk a little bit about videos that I started to put into our newsletter, and I reimagined our whole newsletter because it was the only connection we had with community. Like people weren't even driving around. Everyone was just at home. So we bulked up the newsletter and added a lot more features and started to pull artists in from the community and community members to be a part of the newsletter. So it was going out every 2 weeks, and I'd record a video message, and I would talk about what was going on. It wasn't just about the arts, it was about what was going on in people's lives and how it was affecting them. And I was sharing how it was affecting me. And the response I got was overwhelming. The people that would send me private messages and emails and even phone calls saying, thank you so much. I look forward to seeing your face. I look forward to hearing your voice. I feel so alone. And thank you for adding poetry to the newsletter. It's a highlight for me because I love poetry. So all those different things that we did. So I saw an immediate reaction, and that has carried through. People still sending messages about the comfort that they get from the newsletter. So that's just one example.
Nice.
Yeah, beautiful. Really hearing how you've been able to provide a sense of comfort and connection to people through your reach out, and what a what a start to your job, to be in that role right away. Mary Louise, I'm curious too, because you're involved in dance. It's a very body focused, embodied aspect of art. You know, how do you see what you're doing as a kind of contribution to the community health, community vitality?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. One of the things I had mentioned before in our previous session, or maybe I just mentioned it now, but, you know, really this last 2 years has been, you know, raising the money in order to carry, you know, really to secure all that funding. So certainly mental health wise, I feel way better because I know where I'm going in. But I have been, so we've just started this season, the series, the dance series, but I was bringing up dance up to this region since 2015, while I was also working as the artistic managing director of the Chutzpah Festival. So one of the things I really noticed is where the sort of the pride of the community when people come and visit, right? The whole, you know, so and also we go to the Namgis Reserve too, and perform in the Lawrence Ambers Hall. And so the pride of everyone showing this region to visiting artists. So there was the last show that I had brought up here while I was with Chutzpah was actually an 8-member contemporary dance company from New York. That was dealing with gender issues and dealing with, right, a whole range of things in this great piece. And we had the range of an audience, right, that just were so engaged. And it really, over especially those, 4th years, and gives me this confidence of what we're doing, going to be carrying on doing, is it's so important to not underestimate the artist, the audience, right? So we had fishermen, we had, expats, we had a range of people watching these shows and, really getting into it. And I think the fact that art is being brought to this region, right, and other rules, and I'm sure of the islands too, makes a huge difference for people and how they're feeling economically in particular, right? Keep the tickets really low. So I think it's a sense of pride and which can make somebody feel healthier and good. I'm not going to pretend I'm clearing anybody's illness, but that sense of pride, but also just knowing that economically, financially, it's not going to be a burden for them to be able to see and see this level of art, and it makes things more equitable for the range of people in BC. So
equity,
I like it.
Pride,
I like it.
Yeah. I have a good image in my head of your community watching some professional dance. And
it's like,
I can really sense that sense of sort of specialness that must come from that and pride in place.
Yeah, and also the recognition, right? There's a lot of resource, working here, right? They fishermen work hard, loggers work hard, and when you see dance artists, really, well-trained dance artists up close like that, you can't help but admiring that also, right? And it just expands people's experiences. Right?
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, Andrew, just to complete our round here, it sounds like you're starting a new facility in a time when it's a challenge to do so, and I'm curious about that and how you're seeing your expanding organization playing a role in the vitality of on Hornby Island.
Right. Well, there's a lot of things I could say. I think I'll just give one example, and it's more of a general sort of thing, and then I'll come back to maybe the building, and I'll try to be quick. So I wrote my dissertation about the place of making music on Hornby Island, and that took a few different years. And so what I was looking at is the importance of making music for a small community, and what does it do in a small community. And I was doing it as it related to environmental ethos. But I think, like, if you think about what the arts do in a community, and whatever field or interest you're in, particularly the economics, sure, you can look at it in a very pragmatic way. And I say this as a musician as well, and I think Yael was pointing towards this, but really, like, the arts bring people into a room together. And if we're talking about, say, a performance, you've got the people on stage, and they affect a practice of trying to get together in time and space. Like, literally, they've come together and they're trying to be in time, and they're trying to be in tune. And in order to get them in place, they would have had to coordinate with their partners, and they would have had to manage childcare, and they would have had to get a door person and somebody to cover the bar. And if you think about a small community like ours, they may have had to get a sound person. Suddenly, to affect this performance of 4 or whatever, 5 or 2, this whole other constellation of people get involved. And then the audience gets pulled in, and eventually you've got, I don't know, in our community, maybe 100 people, but they are also, coordinating in time and space. And as dancers, they may actually be, practicing a unified motion, like the audience is here, left foot, right foot, right foot, right foot, right. Even if they're just bobbing their heads, And what you have then are these temporary experiences of utopia, right? Where you are like, for a time, you are actually in time and in tune with each other.
Right.
And you're all enjoying the exact same experience. And that's actually rare. Like it happens with sports teams. It's about states of flow and this kind of stuff. And you experience it sometimes. People experience it with video games. But really, I mean, music is a great example of how that happens. And when you live in small communities, as I gather most of us do, conflict comes up all the time. And it's critical that communities like our own have these moments to actually, physically be in motion together and to be in time together and to arrive in the same place. And so there's a bit of a fun, musical thing to keep in your mind. And then, as to the building itself and what we're working on, we were talking about future proofing in our little breakout group. The building itself also is it's something to hold on to and to focus on in the future. If you're in a tough spot, you're like, all right, what are my goals here? And we have buildings that are ready to retire, or with the smallest fire would like instantly burn down, or have 170-page reports on how they're not doing well. And so it's part of that content. Like I'm not an infrastructure fan, but some things are needed.
Right.
And spaces to gather are essential. So.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's great segue to our next question here. And just to say, I appreciate the thoughtfulness of what you're sharing there, Andrew, about how important it is how vital it is really for people in a community to actually align and be in tune together physically from time to time, these moments of utopia, as you called them. But let's shift here to talking about this idea of future proofing and creating, looking ahead as arts organizations into the future, quite an uncertain future right now. But again, I think I'll start off with Yael, because this is something that I understand that you've been looking at a lot at Salt Spring. And I'm wondering if you could talk about, I think you even brought forward that notion of future proofing to our team here. And I'm curious what it means to you and what you're doing right now.
I think, one of the things we're obviously seeing is how much pressure the current situation in the world is putting on our small communities. And I think it's easy to get really, narrowing in our focus and say, oh my goodness, there's these housing struggles, affordability, staffing shortages, lack of facilities for the arts. There's these issues that I'm guessing may be common within many of our communities, but we're really they're being driven by forces that are outside of our communities. So it's a very interesting place where we find ourselves at. Not to mention things like climate change that we're all impacted by. And I was just referencing this in our breakout group that I love the concept of an ecosystem perspective and thinking about what it takes to make an ecosystem healthy. And I think that's maybe some of the approach or a lens that we can bring to future proofing. If we focus too much on one corner, we're probably letting other things go, and we're going to be unbalanced. And I think about that for example, from an artist perspective. So we looked at our participants in ArtCraft a number of years ago. And ArtCraft is our oldest program. We've been running it since 1968. It's a way where we present visual and fine craft to the community, to lots of visitors, and it generates a lot of income for artisans in our region, and of course all the spin-offs. And we looked at the average age of participants, and most of our participants were women 65 and older. And just from a renewal sustainability question, we asked, well, where are the young artists, and are they here? Are they coming up? Can we expect a future for this program, for this island institution? So we really started to look at that in terms of how we're attracting new artists to our organization, but more so, it's really brought me into the conversation about housing. It's brought me into the conversation about affordable studio space and access to spaces to create. So it's broadening what we're looking at as an arts organization. And I don't necessarily have answers, but connecting with other groups with the same issues. So, for example, I'm part of a local group of EDs that connect on Salt Spring. I'm one of the few arts organizations there, but we're all struggling with that housing staffing issue. And so I think that there's actually opportunity there. We got to recognize the issues, and then we can start moving forward.
Right, thank you. So it's not just sort of projecting forward in time and thinking about what's going to happen then, but also broadening the idea of what your mandate is and what your role is in the community. Yeah.
Yeah. Well put. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Anybody want to jump in and riff off of what Yael has shared about that idea? And I'm thinking one of the things that twigged for me was talking about how to have that intergenerational succession of artists in honestly in our aging islands. Many of them are the populations are aging. How do you bring in newer artists? How do you bring in that new energy that's going to renew your community? I'm going to open it up to anybody who wants to share.
Mitch, I've got a couple that I can throw in there that we're finding here on Maine that are of interest. In the first place,
sorry. I'm not seeing who's speaking. Could you just identify?
It's Ron.
Oh, it's Ron. Okay.
Waits.
Actually, Ron, could you just hold on? Thank you very much. I'm going to just talk to the panelists for another 5 minutes here, and we'll open it up to the floor for comments. If you could just hold on to that, I'll throw it to you first. Okay. Yeah. So anybody from our panel want to share something? Yeah, Mary Louise.
I was just picking up on, well, yeah, talking about when you're talking about housing, right? And just the multiplier effect of that we're, is a real issue. One of the things that I have, for me to think of future, I think, because I'm bringing artists into the area, right? So they are traveling here and then they're leaving. So it's very artist centric how I program and who, in particular, the type of people I want to bring up, because they need to engage in all of that so that there's a sense of development for them in the future. They learn about rural, remote areas, but they also are able to take what they've done here. We've got the capability of really good filming so that it can go towards other things, right? To show for other presenters, to show, as part of that whole sort of ecosystem, but to do are these artist residencies, because that ties into affordability. So let's say outside of, people's, homes and stuff, but it is very difficult for, in particular, contract dance artists, which are the majority of artists. There's only one full-time basically company in Vancouver. To be able to afford to have multi-week consecutive creation time.
Right. Yeah.
If they don't have that, it stops their growth. It stops everybody's growth, right? If you're a presenter too, of what are you going to be able to present in the future and how is it going to sort of carry on? So I did this with Chutzpah too, would bring artists back. So it's not just a one-off, and they come another year and then they're developing another year. So I've, put in a application to be able to carry on with the residencies for every artist that is programmed in the season, because it really just ties down to they need money. And they need the space. And so that to me,
Mary Louise, sorry,
I'm just on. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I'm just going to interrupt you here just because I do want to make a little space for a Q&A.
Of course.
But I actually really appreciate what you're saying, that it sounds like the future proofing that you're doing is really about the artists themselves, or it's not even future proof, but ensuring that they can continue to grow and planting seeds in their own creative process or helping them nurture the seeds of their creativity, which will benefit everybody in the ecosystem, as Yael talked about it, that these artists go on to share their work other places. So I really appreciate you bringing that artist perspective into things as well, and how we are fostering artists from across the province. it looks like we're getting a little short on time. So I know we had, I don't see any questions in the chat, but Ron, if you just wanted to share briefly something it sounded like you wanted to say about this question of future.
Yes, thanks, Mitch. It's rather short and to the point. I think that one of the two aspects we've already spoke about, bringing young people and getting young people to join in, and young families, because here on Maine, we've had such an influx of people that have come from other locations because of medical reasons and other reasons, and they're staying here, and finding that medium for the young people. 2 years ago, the school here had like less than 20 kids. Today it has somewhere.
Oh, sorry.
They introduced drumming, and it really caught on to the students because it was a visual, it was a noise, it was an activity. That's the two things. It's got to be an activity. It's got to be a shared thing in community. And the families need to have that sense of something to do together.
Yeah, thank you, Ron. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate what you're saying, that the arts are a way that bring families together and give young people something to do on our islands, which is sometimes a challenge for sure.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, Andrew had a quick observation he wanted to offer as well, and then I have one more question from our group, and I think we'll wrap it up. So go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, so I just got an example, about future proofing. So the Banff Center, when the pandemic started, they had to fire 80% of their staff right off the top. And, I think that as all of our islands think about the way that our institutions grow or not, if we're really reorganizing our values and what we call work, we have to recognize how vulnerable arts workers are. They are going to career jump. If the pay isn't there, they're going to do it and they're going to burn out. And so the question about young artists and getting young artists also needs to be about like young arts workers. So when I look around at our island's institutions, I see quite, robust institutions that need capable staff. And when I hear people talking about the need for young people on our islands, it often is in terms of like kind of labor, like who's going to chop your wood. But I'm asking, like who is going to run your healthcare center? So something to add on there. Just in the thought of young, we need young people, but what do we really mean?
Yeah. Yes, not just people to work in our grocery stores necessarily, but the future leaders and the future artists who will be here after us. So yeah, thank you so much for that, Andrew. I'm just going to take a question here from Greg in our audience. Do panelists have a sense that their local audiences are growing, shrinking, or staying more or less the same? And maybe I'll ask Carol that, just because you haven't had a chance to speak in our last round here.
Sorry, I was actually typing something in the chat for everyone.
Yeah.
I didn't hear your question. I really wanted to speak to the future proofing.
Okay, well, why don't you say something about that first, and then I'll throw this question out to all the panelists.
Okay, well, I'm just going to erase this because it's half done and it won't look normal.
Sure.
What I wanted to say was I'm thinking about the economics and the economics of an arts council, and the fact that I truly believe that grants are going to start to shrink. The government shelled out a lot of money, and as we all know, when it goes out like that, it's got to come back in again. And I don't like, as a for-profit person before March 16th, 2020, I don't like how vulnerable the Arts Council is and how dependent I am on government grants. So I've been talking to my board about enterprise and how we can create something that we can sustain ourselves, so I can continue to offer the support to artists and on our own terms, because there are so many restrictions when you're receiving grants, what you can and cannot do with the funds. So I'd like to be more, I'd like the arts councils to be more autonomous and to find ways to support themselves to further support the arts.
Thank you. Very inspired by what you're sharing there, Carol, around looking at how we are organizing ourselves as arts organizations and the kinds of ways we can look to the future. Yeah, it looked like you had something you wanted to add to that. So why don't we do that, and then we'll get Greg's question here.
Yeah, I'm happy to respond from my perspective to Greg's question in a moment too, but just what
Sure.
Andrew and Carol both said about the economics of arts organizations just really hits it on the mark for me. I mean,
Mm.
it's, we're going to see that too. We're really, we've had a pretty good time through, we've done okay with a lot of financial and federal, provincial support in the last couple of years. But it is going to dry up, and that's going to make it very difficult for us to pay the wages for professional arts administrators. And we recently went through an internal kind of focus where we bumped up what we're spending on wages. We were having problems with retaining folks, so we upped our wages. I think they're substantially higher than what rural organizations are paying across BC, but they're barely keeping up on Salt Spring. And that's the nature of where our arts organizations are at. And I think one of the things we need to be looking at is more local supports for arts organizations.
Mm.
Weekly, I get someone coming to me with, I've got this great community project and I want to involve artists, but there's no dollars attached to it. So, our arts organizations are helping to support those. Those are such important projects, but we're not necessarily getting the funding back locally from our communities. I think that that's really important, and it's another place to be looking at. We take accommodations dollars and we put them to marketing our communities, but we're not taking accommodation dollars and putting them into the arts in our communities.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of audiences, I'll just to answer that question quickly, I think the jury's out. It's still too early to say, but when we do get a chance to put on events, like when we did put on our summer concert series in 2021, and it was very much a small concert series, I think there was an audible little gasp of anticipation and excitement in our outdoor audience. People were so thrilled to have a chance to come together in a safe space. So when it's safe to do so, people are coming. It's really dependent on what's happening out in the world right now.
Yeah, thank you. Quick comment from one other panelist, perhaps, on the question of audiences before we wrap it up. Mary Louise.
I would reiterate, like, when that certainly if it's very clear right now to your potential audience that you're following all of the public, the 50% capacity. What I have found, because we also, anyways, I just recently co-presented with the Dance Center a show in December, and is that people still are right now afraid, to be coming out. So it's about what we found there, especially in Vancouver, was a half a dozen of one, or whatever, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. And that while those restrictions are in place, I would say that is going to be very clear, and that will sort of continue. But those who are coming are really, really behind coming, and you feel it when they're there, and it's quite wonderful. And I will say that I have a concern into the future with a number of the heavily more funded operating type performing arts organizations that are now just automatically adding on, there's this whole live stream, and that it continues for a whole another week or so, or whatever. There's lots of issues.
It sounds like are you quite concerned about that around the impact
around
on
audience participation, but also getting back to paying artists and paying arts workers and people fairly? Is that the discussion of then when somebody signs up for a contract performing, right? Yeah. Have they signed up to then be continuing to have their, shows shown whatever way, like what are the royalties with all of that? Because in some ways, as a larger organization, or not what I am now, but I think when I was, and just knowing some of the dance organizations very well in the country, that it's almost easier for them to do it.
Yeah,
right?
sure. Yeah,
and that's the thing that I think funders, donors, us as artistic leaders, right, need to really get in there and go, whoa, right? No, this is a live, about the live arts. So I'm very curious.
Thank you so
how
much.
that's gonna
Yeah.
go.
Thank you, Mary Louise. Yeah, it's a whole other topic, isn't it, around
Mhm,
the digitization of arts here that we're
mhm,
experiencing. One last comment from Andrew in the chat, in case you didn't see it, that he's observing that the audience size on Hornby depends on the quality of their programming, but it's really the same community and size, and that earned revenues are quite far down for his organization. So it does sound like it's really hard to tell right now, audiences up or down, quality versus quantity, all those kinds of things. So I just wanted to wrap this up right now and just say thank you so much for a great discussion. Really appreciated all of your contributions. So Andrew, Mary Louise, Carol, and Yael, thank you so much for joining.